Hey everybody, welcome back. I missed you. You're watching The People's Historian and I'm Jason Kishinev. And together we are reading State of War, The Secret History of the CIA and the Bush Administration by James Risen. I apologize, it's been a while. We've had some technical difficulties here with the computer and the camera. I won't bore you with it. But before I begin, feel free to hit that like and subscribe button. Hit that notification bell because YouTube does tend to unsubscribe people from shows that tell the truth. Let's dig in. With Tehran serving as a major shopping bazaar for Russia's post-Cold War arms sales, it certainly wasn't unusual to find Russian and Iranian technicians and bureaucrats mingling. The Russian defector could exploit that tendency to make inroads with the Iranians. As he mingled with the scientists and other academics, the Russian picked up business cards and email addresses. The Russian began to email his new contacts, sending intriguing messages explaining that he wanted to talk with them about his ability to provide materials of interest to Iran. Finally, at one conference, he hit pay dirt when he met a physics professor visiting from Tehran. After the CIA checked out his background, the agency decided that the contact with the Iranian professor was promising. The CIA hoped the Iranian academic might serve as the Russians' entree into the secret world of Tehran's nuclear program. At the least, he might be able to put the Russian in contact with the right people in Iran. The Russian followed up his chance encounter with emails to the scientist back at his university in Iran. The Russian explained that he had information that was extremely important, and he wanted to make an offer. After some delays, the Iranian finally responded with a wary message asking what he had in mind. That was enough for the CIA. Now the Russian could tell Iranian officials in Vienna that he had been in touch with a respected scientist in Tehran before he showed up on their doorstep. The CIA had discovered that a high-ranking Iranian official would be traveling to Vienna and visiting the Iranian mission to the IAEA, and so the agency decided to take the next step and send the Russian to Vienna at the same time. It was hoped that he could make contact with either the Iranian ambassador to the IAEA or the visitor from Tehran. The CIA sent him to Vienna without any backup. Langley didn't want to risk exposure. The CIA station in Vienna wasn't asked to play any role to support the Russian. This operation was dubbed a Special Access Program, and its existence was a tightly held secret. Only a handful of CIA officers knew of the existence of Merlin. That's the name of the operation, remember. Better let the Russian get lost and fumble his way around town than tell more officers about the operation. Sending him to Vienna without any minders would also convince anyone watching that he was just what he appeared to be, an amateur at this game, freelancing. The Russians' cover story was that he was the go-between for the other Russian scientist who had brought the nuclear blueprints out of Arzamas. In truth, he had never met the other defector, but that didn't matter. The story would help answer any questions the Iranians might have about how he came to acquire the blueprints, which were not easy to access or remove from Arzamas. Of course, the Russian was also told not to try to hide the fact that he now lived in the United States. His story should be as close to the truth as possible. Just because he was living in America didn't mean he was working for the CIA. But now that he was in Vienna, he was playing the role of bumbling scientist too well, unable to find the Iranian mission, uncertain even where to get off the train. I spent a lot of time to ask people as I could language problem, in brackets, and they told me that no streets with this name are around. The Russian later explained to the CIA in his imperfect English. Maybe deep down he didn't want to get off the tram and didn't want to find the right office. He had to find time to think. He could not stop thinking about his trip to San Francisco when he had studied the blueprints the CIA had given him. Within minutes of being handed the designs, he had identified a flaw. "This isn't right," he told the CIA officers gathered around the hotel room. "There is something wrong." His comments prompted stony looks, but no straight answers from the CIA men in the room. No one in the San Francisco meeting seemed surprised by the Russians' assertion that the blueprints didn't look quite right. But no one wanted to enlighten him further on the matter either. In fact, the CIA case officer, who was the Russians' personal handler, had been stunned by the Russians' statement. During a break, he took the senior CIA officer aside. "He wasn't supposed to know that," the CIA case officer told his superior. "He wasn't supposed to find a flaw." "Don't worry," the senior CIA officer calmly replied. "It doesn't matter." The CIA case officer couldn't believe the senior CIA's officer's answer, but he still managed to keep his fears from the Russian, and he continued to train him for his mission. After their trip to San Francisco, the case officer handed the Russian a sealed envelope with the nuclear blueprints inside. The Russian was told not to open the envelope under any circumstances. He was to follow the CIA's instructions to find the Iranians and give them the envelope with the documents inside. Keep it simple and get out of Vienna safe and alive, the Russian was told. But the defector was more worried than ever about what kind of game the CIA was getting him into, and he had his own ideas about how he might play that game. In Vienna, the Russian went over his options one more time and made a decision. He unsealed the envelope with the nuclear blueprints and included a personal letter of his own to the Iranians. No matter what the CIA told him, he was going to hedge his bets. There was obviously something wrong with these blueprints, so he decided to mention that fact to the Iranians in his letter. They would certainly find flaws for themselves, and if he didn't tell them first, they would never want to deal with him again. In his badly broken English, the Russian addressed the Iranians as if they were academic colleagues. He later gave a copy of his letter to the CIA. To university. Should I read it in a Russian accent? Maybe I shouldn't, just to make sure you can understand me. To university. First, let me introduce myself. I am a person who worked for many years in atomic industry. The Russian language does not use the word "the." Please check out next page for my personal info, please. I would like to inform you I have very valuable information about design and production of atomic weapon. At this time, I possess a description of one of key elements of modern system, TBA 480 high voltage automatic block. Described device is known as a fire switch which lets to initiate simultaneously all detonators at a weapon core spherical charge. I am sure other devices can be available for your review in the future. I did not contact right people in your country directly because unfortunately I could not find them. Of course, I tried many other ways to attract attention to this info by telling little bit about what I have, but it does not work. Whole misunderstanding, and accordingly wasting time and disappointing. So I decided to offer this absolutely real and valuable basic information for free now, and you can evaluate that. Also, I sent email to inform the Iranian professor about this possible event. Please let him know you have this package. What is purpose of my offer? If you try to create a similar device, you will need to ask some practical questions. No problem. You will get answers, but I expect to be paid for that. Let's talk about details later when I see a real interest in it. Now just take your time for professional study of enclosed documentation. My contact info on next page. The Russian was thus warning the Iranians as carefully as he could that there was a flaw somewhere in the nuclear blueprints and he couldn't help them find it. Oh, he could help them find it. At the same time, he was still going through with the CIA's operation in the only way he thought would work. The Russian slid his letter in with the blueprints and resealed the envelope. After his day of floundering around Vienna, the Russian returned to his hotel near the city's large Stadtpark. He did a computer search and found the right street address for the Iranian mission. His courage bolstered, he decided he would go back and finish the job in the morning. By 8 a.m., he found 19 Heinstrasse, a 5-story office and apartment building with a flat, pale green and beige facade in a quiet, slightly down-at-the-heels neighborhood in Vienna's North End. The street was crowded with tobacco shops, bars and cafes, a tanning salon, even a strip club. Now the Russian realized why he had missed it. There was no sign announcing the Iranian mission. The only proof that this was the right place was a mail directory with 3 rows of tenants' names on the wall beside the building's front door. Amid the list of Did I say Australian? Huh. We're in Austria. Amid the list of Austrian tenants, there was one simple line. PM/Iran. The Iranians clearly didn't want publicity. The Russian's fevered rush of adrenaline as he approached the building suddenly cooled when he realized the Iranian office was closed for the day for some unexplained reason. Once again, he spent the day walking Vienna and once again mulling over the CIA's orders. He returned to his hotel again that night, still clutching the undelivered documents. He returned one last time to the Iranian mission early the next morning and stood for a few agonizing minutes on the empty sidewalk outside. He came back that afternoon and an Austrian postman finally helped him make up his mind. As the Russian stood silently by, the postman opened the building door, dropped off the mail, and walked quietly away to complete his neighborhood rounds. His courage finally reinforced, the Russian decided to follow suit. He now realized that he could leave his package without actually having to talk to anyone. He slipped through the front door and hurriedly shoved his envelope through the inner door slot at the Iranian office. At 1:30 p.m., I got a chance to be inside of the gate at the entrance to the Iranian mission, the Russian later explained in writing to the CIA. They have 2 mailboxes, one after gate on left side for post mail. I could not open it without key. And other one nearby an internal door to the mission. Last one has easy access to insert mail, and also it was locked. I passed internal door and reached the mission entry door and put a package inside their mailbox on left side of their door. I cover it old newspaper, but if somebody wants, that it is possible to remove this package from mailbox, in my opinion. I had no choice. The Russian fled the mission without being seen. He was deeply relieved that he had finally made the handoff without ever having to come face to face with a real live Iranian. He flew back to the United States without being detected by either Austrian security or, more important, by Iranian intelligence. From its headquarters at Fort Meade, Maryland, the National Security Agency monitors global airline reservation databases, constantly checking on the travel arrangements of foreign officials and others targeted by American intelligence around the world. Jason Bourne, in other words. In February 2000, the NSA was also eavesdropping on the telephone lines of the Iranian mission in Vienna. It could intercept communications between the mission and Tehran. In addition, the NSA has broken the codes of the Ministry of Intelligence and Security, Iran's Foreign Intelligence Service. The Americans had several different ways to track the movements of Iranian officials in and out of Vienna. Just days after the Russian dropped off his package at the Iranian mission, the NSA reported that an Iranian official in Vienna abruptly changed his schedule and suddenly made airline reservations and flew home to Iran. The odds were that the nuclear blueprints were now in Tehran. The Russian scientist's fears about the operation were well-founded. He was the front man for what may have been one of the most reckless operations in the modern history of the CIA, one that may have helped put nuclear weapons in the hands of a charter member of what President George W. Bush has called the axis of evil. Operation Merlin has been one of the most closely guarded secrets in the Clinton and Bush administrations, and it may not be over. Some officials have suggested that it might be repeated against other countries. Merlin was born out of frustration. For more than a decade, one post-Cold War CIA director after another went before Congress and the nation to vow that America's spies were now focused on new gathering threats posed by a set of hard targets: terrorists, rogue nations, weapons of mass destruction. Each new director promised that the CIA was changing rapidly to adapt to this complex new world in which the Soviet Union was no longer the main enemy. But the CIA has failed in its new mission and has never found out enough about any of these new targets. Iran's nuclear program remains one of the most impenetrable of them all. Even before the disastrous collapse of its Iranian spy network in 2004, the CIA was able to pick up only fragmentary information about Iran's nuclear program. Officials who are critical of the CIA's efforts say that the agency's counter-proliferation programs have relied far too heavily on intelligence collected from technical methods, spy satellites, eavesdropping, and code breaking, as well as measurement and signature intelligence, which includes the collection and analysis of data from hidden equipment like remote ground sensors. Lacking definitive answers about Iran's atomic program, the CIA has instead offered a series of safe and cautious estimates. Over the years, the agency has repeatedly stated that Iran was within 5 to 10 years of becoming a nuclear power. Those 5 to 10 years keep stretching and expanding. The Counter-Proliferation Division within the CIA's Directorate of Operations, the agency's clandestine espionage arm, came up with Merlin and other clandestine operations as creative, if unorthodox, ways to try to penetrate Tehran's nuclear development program. In some cases, the CIA has worked jointly with Israeli intelligence on such operations, according to people familiar with the Convert program. Convert? I think it might be supposed to be covert program there. None are known to have worked. One bizarre plan called for the sabotage of Iran's electrical grid in areas of the country near its secret nuclear installations. The CIA conducted tests of the electrical sabotage equipment at the U.S. government's Nevada nuclear test range. The plan called for an electromagnetic pulse device that could be smuggled into Iran and then hidden next to large power transmission lines carrying electricity into the country's nuclear facilities. The CIA would later remotely detonate the device, which would send a massive electrical pulse down the power lines, shorting out the computer systems inside the Iranian nuclear complex. The CIA worked with Mossad, Israel's spy service, on the plan, and Mossad agents volunteered to smuggle the devices into Iran. The Israelis told the CIA that they had Iranian agents who would carry out the plan on their behalf, but there were major technical problems that made the plan unworkable. The electromagnetic devices were so large that they had to be carried in a large truck and then parked next to the power lines. The CIA realized that was impossible. Then there was Merlin. On paper, Merlin was supposed to stunt the development of Tehran's nuclear program by sending Iran's weapons experts down the wrong technical path. The CIA believed that once the Iranians had the blueprints and studied them, they would believe the designs were usable and so would start to build an atomic bomb based on the flawed designs. But Tehran would get a big surprise when its scientists tried to explode their new bomb. Instead of a mushroom cloud, the Iranian scientists would witness a disappointing fizzle. The Iranian nuclear program would suffer a humiliating setback, and Tehran's goal of becoming a nuclear power would have been delayed by several years. In the meantime, the CIA, by watching Iran's reaction to the blueprints, would have gained a wealth of information about the status of Iran's weapons program, which had been shrouded in secrecy. And let's close the episode there. So glad you could join me. Thanks for being here. I hope you enjoyed it. And I hope you hit that like and subscribe button. We'll see you next time.